Hey everybody, welcome to part 3 of documenting your engineering design journey. So this is my short little video here where I'm going to do a walkthrough. And again, remember we talked about the pros and cons of an electronic design notebook, which I'm going to show you versus a hard copy. And again, just to remind you that there will probably be advisors and BSE 508 and 509 here in our program that will require a hard copy, or some will require both. And so it's really important that you communicate with your advisor, just like you would communicate with your employer, because your employer is going to have certain needs. I talked a little bit about those needs in both part 1 and part 2. So I'm assuming that the vast majority of people in this class are going to use Google Drive. And here's a couple things that I want to strongly recommend. I have both my personal Google Drive. It's, my email is shutsky@gmail.com. And I actually use that one a lot. But then also for official university business, I use my wisc.edu instance of the G Drive. So the benefit of doing that is, number one, you are assured of retaining all intellectual property if you use your Google Drive. Those same assurances don't necessarily apply if you're using your personal instance or your personal Google account. I think the other thing that might be of benefit is you're able a little bit more easily to share across with your team, with your advisor, and then ultimately with your instructor. And that includes me in 508 and then the future instructor of BSE 509. So here's the deal. I'm going to walk you through this, and then I'm going to bounce it back out, and I'm going to show you how to share this privately or share this in ways that are safe and not only private, but basically difficult to manipulate, or so that you don't have unintended consequences of sharing your Google Drive. So I've set this up. I have everything in one master file, and I'm just pretending this is my individual. Let's just say that I, John Shutsky, am taking this class, BSE 508, at the individual level. Now, realize that when you get into 509, it's going to be a lot more teamwork, and you're going to probably have a team version of this same drive. So I set it up as a folder. Your advisor may have their own instructions in terms of file names. I tend to give my files and my folders in Google Drive because you got a lot of flexibility. You can include unusual characters, like you see here, I've got the double hyphen. I tend to put in things that are very descriptive. And the benefit for me personally is that Google Drive is super searchable, right? You're using Google as the background search engine. And so if I'm as descriptive as possible, then I make sure that I'm able to find things. You can also find things by author, by date. So there's lots of flexibility in Google Drive. I tend to put things in very descriptive format. So my next slide here, or my next screen that I go to, you're going to see a very comprehensive overview. What I want you to do, and I'm going to give you the link to this, if you want to replicate this, and if you want to maybe get a little bit of additional input from your advisor, from other people, if you want to like talk a little bit amongst yourselves, you're welcome to do that. I have things set up, and they're roughly in the order of how 508 is going to unfold from the start of the semester to the end of the semester, and then transitioning into 509. And that's why I have these numbered. I have them numbered because it makes sorting a lot easier. If I sort, I can sort on name, and it's going to give me what it's going to give it to me in numerical order. I have all the homework assignments. I'm not going to go into all of these folders in a great deal of detail, but you can see, like in BSE 508, we have 11 different homework assignments, and you're going to know ahead of time what those homework assignments are titled. So you might want to just go ahead and set up folders where each one of the homework assignments can be placed. Now, I'll just give you one little example. Like I believe homework number 3, you do a lot of research. You collect a bunch of articles, and you download those articles, and you do an annotated bibliography, and you do some like analysis and some synthesis, and you come with an APA formatted bibliography that has those annotations. So homework number 3, this, when you open this up in the future, it's likely to have a half dozen or even 15 or 20 different files that are located just within homework number one. So maybe think about keeping your work product initially together in your different homework folders, and it'll make it easier when you go back to retrieve and locate those various files. So yeah, we've got research and background information, the records and logs of searching. I'm going to talk about that when I talk about locating information. It's really important that you keep a record of like where you've searched and what the keywords were and maybe where those search strategies are located. Important. Other related projects, patents, intellectual property. Number 5 is engineering standards. Again, I'm not going to walk through all of these. A couple of things I want to just note for you. Keep track of email. Please keep track of email. A lot of the information that you send back and forth with your advisor, a lot of that's going to transpire by email. So make sure you pay attention to emails, make sure you save those emails, have a way of going back and retracing your steps. Here's another really critical one, number 12, agendas and minutes from team meetings and advisor meetings. There will be in this module a template for team minutes. So that could be a record of your team. And then make sure you store those in the appropriate location. You're probably going to want to give them a time and date and who attend, like make sure that you're descriptive in that file title. Be consistent with your file naming strategies and your file titling strategies. What ends up happening here is that there's a transition somewhere down here around 14 or 15, maybe actually a little bit further down here where you start to look at things that are more in BSE 509, like moving from the bottom on up. Project evaluation, testing, iteration, that's at the very end of 509. Your fabrication, your construction, your manufacturing, the shop work that you did, the plans for your 3D printing, all that kind of stuff is probably going to be in those latter folders. You don't have to have those fully developed at this point, but this is a structure that would work for me as a student because I do tend to think in sort of like linear, chronological order. And in this case, the numbering of the file folders works well for me just because it's easier for me to sort things and do things in that way. Let me also say that when you put a file in, like let's just say, for example, you have an email that you have captured from your advisor. Now I open this folder up. You've got this email back and forth about like your first meeting date or whatever it is that you're trying to make a decision with the support of your advisor. There are a couple things you could do. You could open up a new Google document and you could just cut and paste the text. You could also export your email as a PDF file, and you could upload the PDF file. Both of those would be completely satisfactory, but you should really try to be as consistent as possible. I would really rather have you err on the side of having too much stuff in your Google Drive or in your design notebook, whether it's a digital notebook or a print notebook. I would always rather have you err on the side of having too much information rather than having to go back in the future and reconstruct it. Now I'm going to just show something to you, and this is a little bit more advanced, but you'll want to be thinking about this as we move toward the future. This is an actual design notebook for the team that I supervised. You can see here from the date that a lot of these are dated 2018 and 2019. This team actually did the majority of its work in the fall of 2018. And this was the group for BSE 509. So you'll see what ended up happening here is in 509, they developed a team notebook using Google Drive. And one of the things that's interesting, if you track back, you see here it says design notebooks. I can go in and I could look at, we actually have the full design notebooks from 508 from all, in this case, all 6 team members. And if I were to go into this in any level of detail, by the way, I asked for the permission from these students a couple of years ago. You can see here, a reasonably complete. We've got the background information, the client information, Parker's homeworks. Parker's now a graduate student in our department. So he's got these I would like to see these maybe organized a little bit differently, maybe a little bit more, maybe one folder for each notebook because it's a little bit disorganized. But you get the picture of how we are nesting the individual notebooks in 509 from the work that you will now be doing in 508. So be thinking about this. The other part, as part of the homework that's associated with initially creating your design notebook, here's what I'm going to ask you to do. I'm going to ask you to, first of all, watch these 3 videos, and then I want you to outline how you are going to put together your individual design notebook. Again, watch my videos, use some of the things that I'm telling you, but also you'll probably want to check in with your advisor and get some of their recommendations. Um, you can outline that either as a document, that could be a Google document or a Word document, but you're going to end up sharing that in the discussion, whatever you come up with as a proposed structure. You could probably also do like a screen capture. So if all this would fit onto one screen, I could do some screen captures to kind of get like a feel for what this is going to look like. The other thing that you're welcome to do, if you would like to do this, is to go ahead and set up kind of a mock Google Drive structure. It doesn't have to be final. I would suggest maybe putting an hour to an hour and a half into this. It took me probably an hour and a half to set mine up as an example. If you do this, I welcome you then as part of the first part of homework to go ahead and share what you've come up with on Google Drive or your PDF or your Word document or your Google document. And to share this, here's how you do it. And I just want to make absolutely sure that you're comfortable with how you share a Google folder. Okay, so again, I'm assuming that you're starting out in the Google Drive that's located here at wisc.edu. So that's the one that you would access through G Drive through UW-Madison. So to go to this folder, so this is the folder that I want to share with my fellow classmates, and I'm going to put the link in the discussion so that people can look at how I've set mine up and they can provide some replies and some comments. Let me move this window down. So when I go here, I'm going to right click. I'm going to right click on this, and you'll see here that there's share. So obviously I'm going to share it. And this is where things get a little bit tricky. You're going to want to make sure that before you copy this link, that you see here, it says anyone on the internet can view. I'd prefer that for the sake of your draft, you do anyone on the internet can view, but make sure that you have this as a viewer and not an editor. If you share this link with the world and you've enabled anybody who goes on and looks at this to be an editor, they can erase it. They can move your files around. They can change the file names. They pretty much have free reign to do whatever they want to do. Another thing that you may want to consider to maybe make things just a little bit more safe is rather than saying anybody in the world can look at it if they have the link as a viewer, instead what I could do is I could say, I think I can do it like this. Anyone who's a UW-Madison G Suite owner, so that would be any of the students in BSE 508 or 509, or your advisors or faculty members, you could change it to this as well. The only thing is then that they would have to be logged into their G Suite in order to access this. So it doesn't really matter if you do it through the G Suite at wisc.edu or if you do it to the world, but what is absolutely critical is that you select viewer and not editor, okay? Because if you do editor, it's the wild, wild west and anybody can go in there and change. I'm actually going to change mine back. I typically say anybody with the link can look at my stuff. They can view it. Unless I don't want them to view it, then I don't ever enable permissions for certain files or certain folders. But I work a lot with people who are outside the university and I want them to be able to access my stuff. So I actually use this particular link quite frequently. But again, viewer, not editor. So this one is now, this one's set up. If I copy the link, I could go in and I could paste that. And that's exactly what I'm going to do here for the Canvas module, which will be the next thing that I update. This gives you a little bit of an example for what an acceptable Google Drive engineering design notebook will look like for 508 and probably 509, depending on the adjustments that your advisor wants you to make, a little bit on like sharing, and also a little bit on how in the future we will integrate the individual notebooks eventually with the team notebooks. If you have any questions or comments, or if there's anything that's unclear, do make sure that you let me know. And I will look forward to seeing and reviewing your design notebooks like really soon here after the semester gets started. Let me know if you have questions. Talk to you soon.